This session is sponsored by Exchange Bank. Invested in you.
Hi, everyone. I'm George Christie with Wine Industry Network, and I'd like to welcome you to the final presentation of the inaugural Wine Industry Sales Symposium. Now, this session was brought to us by WineDirect, and it's titled, How to Sustain Sales Without Tasting Room Visitors. Now, the topic was already incredibly relevant across the entire country with the impact of COVID-19, but layering on the latest set of fire events like we're experiencing here in California, which makes it 3 out of the last 4 years, maintaining sales momentum without the luxury of new and existing customers coming into your tasting room makes this topic even more relevant. Now, for those of you in the audience that are watching, I want to encourage you to take advantage of the chat feature and submit those questions. Our speakers are going to do their very best to answer them as they come in, but any questions that we don't get to, we'll certainly address and push out in the email to follow that will also have a direct link to this session. You can watch it in replay. Now, to kick things off, I want to introduce Jim Agar. Jim is the Vice President of e-commerce for WineDirect. Jim, welcome. I think I'm going to hand it off to you and join the audience.
Wonderful. Thanks so much for having us today. I'm really excited about this panel. As George said, it couldn't come at a better time. I think if anyone was to list their top 3 most important strategic goals or concerns right now, number 1 is how do you sustain your direct-to-consumer sales program without tasting room visitors? So I'm pleased to be part of today's group. So, let's just kind of start off with a quick check-in. If you're feeling a bit of whiplash and you're responsible for a direct-to-consumer sales program, well, it's totally understandable. In the second quarter of 2020, so it's April, May, and June, e-commerce revenue growth, the growth rate was 44%. So if you just take a look at this slide, that's after nearly a decade or more of hovering right about 20%, and all of a sudden out of nowhere, 44% growth. And that is a rush of new consumers buying online from new brands, new businesses, and getting involved in new categories. So I mentioned the word whiplash. Well, why is it okay to feel like you have a bit of whiplash? That is 10 years of growth, 10 years of e-commerce growth in just a 3-month period. So that has major implications all the way up and down the supply chain, business chain. For vendors like WineDirect, we saw an immediate shift from interest in performance and features related to the POS to an onslaught of information about, hey, requests, or how do we accelerate all the things we were doing in the world of e-commerce and selling direct. And in fact, we did this tremendous shift where we moved resources and started immediately hiring to accelerate the rate of change in delivering new features to help wineries succeed in this new environment. And if we take a look at what this really meant, if you look at January and February, so prior to stay-at-home orders and shutdowns related to COVID-19, website orders made up, on average about 20% of a typical winery's revenue. Well, fast forward into March and you can start to see a change. And then in April, that's 50%. And then even within that group, we see a lot of wineries that prior to COVID, 2, 3, and 4% was the best they could do in terms of e-commerce sales. And now we watch this closely each week. And what we saw is that long tail of e-commerce orders persisted, right? It wasn't an immediate stocking up of wine and getting the cellar built. But we're seeing, and you can just look at June and see that those shoppers that came to buy from your winery during stay-at-home and shutdown, even when tasting rooms or restaurants and things start opening up in other states, they stuck around. And this is true amongst all other categories. I was reading a McKinsey study that said 75% of consumers after March, during stay-at-home orders, tried purchasing from a new online store, a new brand, or a new method of delivery. So ordering, grocery delivery, for example. And 60% of those customers stuck around. So they were introduced to a new brand, new method to purchase. 60% stuck around. So I just make this point that this is not only a point event, right, that was just related to stay at home or COVID, but this is a 10-year shift in purchasing activity that happened in 3 months, and it's going to persist. So when we talk about strategic priorities for any winery's business going forward, and this is reinforced by every single conversation I have with a winery customer every day, selling online efficiently, acquiring customers without a taste room, number one priority. And one other thing that we observed in April, May, and now into June is that 73% of lost tasting room revenue among all of our customers was made up through e-commerce sales. So the increase in e-commerce sales, while the order volume is nothing near what you would sell in a tasting room, because the average order value is $282 or more for some wineries when you're selling through your website, made up about 3/4 of that lost revenue. Now that's, giving back some of those gains, but still it just emphasizes that opportunity is there, and it's incredibly leveraged because of the high average order value of that one online sale. Now, there is a kind of a stark reality here, and you're hearing a lot about this. There's going to be haves and have-nots, big winners and some folks that lose in the kind of the COVID sweepstakes here. And what we've observed is that when you divide our clients' commerce sales pre-COVID into quartiles, the lower half, they saw a revenue decline of 28%. So meaning wineries that had a very small percentage of their total sale through e-commerce, they didn't see these 200, 300, 400% order gains. So those that had infrastructure in place, those that were committed to doing things like gathering email addresses or having professionals on staff or available to hire, have had pre-existing e-commerce programs, and they're winning the lion's share. So much so that when you look at the fourth quartile, right, the top 25% of those of our customers that are great at selling online, and they were great at selling online in advance, their e-commerce, their total revenue is increased by 10%. So what do we do with this information now? That's really what kind of brings us to the rest of the team here. I wanted to set the table and make a few points. Number one, this is a tremendous opportunity, and it is one that is going to be lasting. Committing to selling online and third-party channels to gather and recruit new customers is incredibly important to the survival of wineries, but it's also incredibly leveraged. Why is that? Because selling online is actually quite effective, and your average order value is really high. So before I kick things off, I'm going to hand the mic over to Adrian. Just say a quick few words about WineDirect. So if you're not familiar with WineDirect, we are a company that's purpose-built to do one thing, and that's help wineries succeed selling directly to consumers. And our business is largely focused on what's called small to medium wineries that are entirely reliant on the direct consumer channel for success. And we do that by providing software, and we have over 2,000 different winery and brands that are using our software today. That software helps people manage their wine clubs and subscriptions. It's used in retail rooms for point of sale, and of course, e-commerce and all the little things that come with it, like Light CRM for email campaign execution and customer management. And then there's a fourth pillar here that I think it's really important to talk about, and that's a project that we've been working on now for a few years. We call marketplace distribution. Basically, that's just a way for connecting wineries with third-party sales opportunities, things like eBay, or increasingly Vivino, and there's a number of others that we're doing. And this is a legal compliant infrastructure for connecting and efficient and simple to use to connect a winery with these third-party sales opportunities. And when we talk about 75% of the consumers have tried a new channel or working with a new brand, this is completely played out in the third-party sales world. Our relationship with Vivino year over year, it's up 400%. And there's other channels too that we're working. Even eBay is exploding. And it's just because consumers are there at the party, they're looking for wine. And we'd like to be the partner that helps you take advantage of those opportunities. And fulfillment, fulfillment's more important than ever. Execution, these new consumers that might be coming to wine for the first time, they have much higher standards for things like order accuracy, speed of delivery, and getting information about those packages. And so you're going to need a partner that's ready to meet those expectations so that you can just wow your customers and keep them. Because once you spend money to retain them, it's super easy to drop the ball once in just one shipment or have the wrong bottle sneak their way in there. So for us, that's an unacceptable outcome. So with that, I'll kick things over to Adrian, who's going to talk to you a little bit about the panel that we've assembled today. These are experts in the field and know exactly how to solve these problems, and they're working on it each and every day. So thanks everybody for including us, and have a great day.
Thanks, Jim. So I'd like to invite my panelists, Ed and Kim, to join me on camera. Hey guys, welcome. So I'm Adrienne Stillman. I'm the Director of Marketing at WineDirect, and I'm really excited to be joined today by Kim Kramer of Kramer Vineyards and Ed Fuchuk of Tank Garage Winery. Let's go ahead and meet our wonderful panelists. So Kim is the winemaker, as I said, of Kramer Vineyards, located in the Willamette Valley. Kim, tell us a little bit about your winery. Set the stage for us.
Yeah, sure. So we're a small grower producer in the North Willamette Valley, family owned and operated. We have about 22 acres of vines. I'm a second generation winemaker. We're a very strong direct to consumer brand. Most of our wines are sold through the tasting room to wine club members, and then more recently on the website. And we produce Pinot Noir, Chardonnay, Pinot Gris, and sparkling wines as well.
Awesome. Thank you for joining us. And Ed of Farm Collective and Tank Garage Winery. Ed, tell us about Tank Garage, which is the brand that we're going to be primarily focused on today.
Yeah, so Tank is a very unconventional brand in a very conventional area, and we specialize in making one-off blends of red wines, white wines, orange wines, pet nat sparkling wines, natural wines. We run the whole gamut. We are just sort of built on exploring new creative endeavors and innovating and pushing the boundaries. We're known for provocative marketing, as it said there, but it's a lot of fun because it's a really fresh, energetic take on wine.
Absolutely. And it's fun to have the contrast of both of your brands, which we know which are very different. But as we're going to find out as we go into this discussion, you're using a lot of the same tools and a lot of the same strategies. So it's really an example of how any winery can take advantage of these tools. Anyone can be successful, no matter what your business model or location or even size of your team is. So let's take a look at our agenda. We're going to start out talking about the art of the pivot. So we're going to begin with, okay, what happened in March? Ed and Kim, what did you do when these closures came down? You obviously had to make a lot of changes. How has that been going? We're then going to talk about customer acquisition. This is obviously an extremely hot topic and perhaps one of the most challenging things right now, because for most wineries, the tasting room is the primary customer acquisition channel. So how can we do that online? Then we're going to talk about driving engagement and repeat sales. Once you've acquired these customers, how do we keep them coming back and increase the frequency of purchases, as well as engage your existing customers and wine members? And then finally, we're going to talk about measuring your success, which is a crucial component of any marketing efforts. But I think particularly when you're trying out new things, as we all are right now, measuring your success, seeing what was successful, maybe what was not successful, figuring out where you should spend more of your efforts is really important for success. And then finally, we'll wrap up with talking a little bit about planning for fall, the things that you guys have on deck coming up for this busy holiday sales season. And as George mentioned earlier, I invite all of our audience members to join us in the chat. We are pre-recording this session, and all three of us will be in the chat, so we're available to answer questions as they come up, and we'd love to hear from you. All right, let's talk about the art of the pivot. Kim, let's start with you. Tell us, about what you changed immediately, kind of in the March, early mid-March, early April timeframe?
Yeah, so we're before pre-COVID, we're really focused on having a good customer experience in the tasting room, and that's really where all of our efforts would lie. But without that, we quickly realized that there was a lot of opportunity to do that online. So we put a ton of energy into different segmented email campaigns, social media, both organic and paid. And just really tried to think outside the box, engage our local audience, but also our out-of-state folks who are going through a very similar thing that we were going through here in Oregon. And so, yeah, just trying to figure out how we can replicate that customer journey that we would normally do in person through the digital tools that we had available to us.
Yeah, absolutely. Ed, what about you? What was your experience as you got into March and all these changes came down?
Yeah, I mean, nobody I know has gone through a pandemic like this. So we've gone through crises in the past. We had an earthquake about 6 years ago. We had some fires about 3 years ago. So we're no strangers to kind of crisis marketing when it comes to wine. So we've had sort of an edict ever since then that if you stay ready, you won't have to get ready. And we've had a pretty robust commitment to e-commerce ever since then. But obviously, these are unprecedented times, as they like to say. So we rolled out some unprecedented measures, and it really just comes down to being more aggressive with what we were doing and more sophisticated with some of the techniques and the tactics that we're going to talk about today. So it's the kind of age-old expression, working harder and smarter. That's what we did.
Thank you. All right, so let's talk about new customer acquisition. And, as I said, this is obviously a really hot button topic for folks, and probably something that a lot of people in our audience are thinking about. How do I acquire new customers if I don't have them coming in person to the tasting room? And, the thing that emerged from both of you is really the primary place that you're going to acquire new customers is going to be through social media. So let's dig into what that looks like. Ed, let's start with you. And tell us a little bit about how you've been approaching this question, and particularly your efforts on Instagram.
Yeah, so the way we look at it, and a lot of marketers look at it, is the customer funnel, right? Everyone's familiar with this concept, kind of tracking the life cycle of a consumer, and starting with brand awareness, or maybe in some sort of experience with your brand. We're accustomed to doing it through retail tourism. So people come here, they go through our tastings, they're with our staff, they're on our property. We imbue these values to them through experience. And now it's kind of different because we can't do that. And we're competing with a lot of other people that are really good at, building leads online. So we're trying to right here address the top part of the customer funnel, which is brand awareness or leads. So one of the tactics that we use, and I know a lot of wineries use, is running social media posts. So here's a sponsored ad that we ran on Instagram. This is a partnership we did with another brand called Parks Project. So we had some kind of co-fermentation there. And we do something really unique, or something that will grab someone's attention, because we know we have 1 to 2 seconds when they're scrolling. And once we have that, we can give them the offer, and then the call to action here is to get them to subscribe. So we're getting their attention. They've maybe never heard of Tank Garage Winery before, but we're showing them something cool. And because we're using the power of Facebook and Instagram's kind of advertising prowess, we're able to really pinpoint people that we know will be into our brands. And so from here, they will hopefully click subscribe. It'll bring them to another page. They drop in their email address, and that sort of starts the journey, as you will. So really here, we're just shifting away from acquiring customers via retail ways, and really trying to do it through social media, which is, I think, a tactic that, the whole Shopify small business boom is built on top of this. So we're just kind of following suit.
Absolutely. And I love what you've done in this particular post, because in addition to the fact that you're running a campaign and there's a subscribe call to action, you're also in the caption, you say tag a friend who loves California. So you're encouraging people to also engage or just organically attract additional folks who you might not have reached through the targeting of this ad, which is awesome.
It's a good, it's the old sort of referral thing. So if we think you're going to like it, there's a good chance the people that you hold in close company will like it too. And it works well.
Yeah. The other thing, I want to just touch on here is the importance of imagery. And you've obviously got a carousel of images here. So there's a number of photos that people can see if they choose to swipe. And I know that you've done a lot of testing around what images you use and what is really going to convert well. And I think, you can expand on this, but you found that more unique and different images are much more effective than, if you have a beautiful photograph of your vineyard, of course, it's very attractive, but it's not necessarily that different from many other photos of vineyards.
Yeah. So this goes down to the problem that marketing presents you, right? Marketing is the function of differentiating yourself, doing things that other people can't do or aren't doing. So we do this a lot. We run A/B tests, or they're also called multivariate tests, and we take a bunch of images and we'll run ads on them, or we'll send emails out with them in there, and we'll see which ones perform best. And those are the ones that we sort of run with. So my recommendation is to not just do a beautiful winery shot or a picture of your scenic vineyard vista, because there's going to be a lot of people that do that, and it's going to be hard to stand out. But take a good collection of image assets that you think really present the identity of your brand, and then run tests against them, run these A/B tests, and then the numbers will kind of dictate which one you're going to go with full bore.
Yeah, great tip. And Kim, I know you've done your own tests and found found success by doubling down based on your findings from each test. And we'll look at some of your examples in a moment. So once, Ed, you've attracted somebody to sign up for your mailing list, then what happens?
Yeah. So you can do a lot of different things. What we choose to do is we choose to automate the next step, which is, a lot of our Instagram ads will entice people to join our mailing list, and we'll send them maybe, $1 shipping on their first order or $20 off their first order to try to get their business. And then from there, once they subscribe, which we talked about earlier, they'll automatically be sent sort of a welcome email. And you've seen them from other brands, but they say, hey, welcome to Tank Garage Winery. Here's what we're about. Here's what we're into. Here's your code. You can use it within the next week. And then here's some suggestions, because we don't really know you yet. Mm-hmm. And from there, based on how they behave to that email, we'll automate, secondary and third and fourth layers of emails to kind of just push them through the email customer journey cycle. So this is just a really simple example here. So if somebody doesn't open the email, maybe we'll resend the same email a couple of days later with a new subject line. If they open email, we might send, but they don't buy, we might send them another email a couple of days later, but maybe we'll add some urgency there, and we'll show kind of a countdown clock ticking that says, hey, you have 2 days left to redeem this offer. If they clicked the offer, say they made it all the way to their store, but they didn't actually purchase anything, well, then we may retarget them in social media, which we'll talk a little bit about in a second, to kind of, get the product up in front of them in maybe a different form or a different channel, just to remind them. And if they bought, then the next step in our customer journey is to get them to purchase again, because once they're a recurring purchaser, they are a legitimate customer of ours. But these are just really simple steps you could start with. You could even narrow this down to 1 or 2 steps, but these are really effective and powerful ways to automate your marketing and do a lot of the hard lifting while you're sleeping.
Yeah. And also, as we're going to talk a little bit about later with Kim, like when you have a small team, this kind of work can be done upfront on your own time. You need to devote some hours to it, but then just as you just said, Ed, it just keeps going. It keeps working in the background, no matter what other projects you're working on, or whether you need to go into the tasting room, or whether you need to go, out and take delivery of grapes for harvest.
Yeah. Isn't that cool?
So cool. So let's talk about, one of these examples of remarketing. So for somebody who, for example, had received an email, they clicked on it, but they didn't buy, this is something that you might retarget them with on Instagram. And I'll for those of you who maybe aren't familiar with the term remarket or retarget, effectively what that means is that you take usually an email list and you upload it into Facebook, and it allows you to target those specific people. So you can send this ad only to folks who received an email promoting Wild Eyes wine, or only to your club members. So with that background, Ed, take it away. Tell us about this ad.
Yeah. So you can remarket in a variety of ways. You could remarket in the email customer journey, like we just talked about, which is, hey, if they don't do anything or if they get really close to checking out, you can send them an email, maybe incentivizing or prodding them to actually complete the purchase. In this instance, and something that we use is we have a Facebook pixel on our website. So we're able to really diligently track people, and the people that come to our website and say maybe they bounce right before checking out, or maybe even during the checkout process. Well, we know exactly who those people are, and we have it integrated into Facebook, so we can run ads specifically to them, maybe a day later or 2 days later. That again is a sort of prodding them to purchase. Maybe we'll give them an offer to kind of push them over the edge, but just again trying to get their attention in a different channel. These are again these things that you can do through automation that are really easy, and they are really, really powerful. So I know people talk about them a lot, but they're not actually that difficult to set up. You just have to have a little bit of infrastructure in place to make them work.
All right, Kim, let's talk about some of the ways that you've been taking advantage of similar tactics. So this is similar to the first Instagram ad that Ed shared with us, where you're inviting people to join your community. The primary action you want people to take is to become a subscriber. Tell us how this ad campaign worked for you.
Right. So instead of targeting potential customers on Instagram, we decided to go with Facebook. Most of our customers are on there anyway, and so it made sense for us to pursue that platform. And through a series of tests with their lead ad campaign, we landed on the right combination of headline, copy length, and creative, and had a pretty successful run with this ad to get people to sign up for our mailing list. We also did some targeting through Facebook to try and reach people that like sparkling wines. Although we're a pretty traditional brand, sparkling is a new and emerging style in this region. And so it's one of the things that sets us apart. And so we thought it made a lot of sense to do an ad campaign finding new people that are interested in sparkling wines. And so we were really happy with this. Not only did we get a lot of new subscribers, but we also got great engagement on the ad itself.
That's fantastic. And, specifically, you shared with me that you acquired 800 new mailing list members at, $1.83 per email sign up, which is really phenomenal. When you think about how much money you'd have to spend to get 800 people into your tasting room, this is a far lower, lower investment and very effective ROI later as you do your follow up with them.
Totally. And I was really, really happy with the performance of this campaign in that regard. And then also with the ways that you can tag people, you can follow them after they sign up. And also because they signed up because of sparkling, chances are they're going to be interested in receiving more information from us about sparkling wine. Right. So I can tag them as a Facebook lead. I can tag them as interested in sparkling wines, and then send them follow-up messaging that they're interested in because of the information that I've gotten from them already.
Yeah, that's a great point that you made about tagging their interests and understanding more about which wines or which types of wines or even types of information people are interested in that you can glean from their interaction with your ads.
Exactly. And the more that you can make the offer relevant, the better, the more they're going to want to see the next offer. And so having the ability to segment and tag and really anything that you can do to fine tune that messaging is only going to be better. It's better for the customer. It's better for us, but it's better for the customer.
Yeah, absolutely. So tell us about this example. This is an ad that you ran also on Facebook. And in this case, it was an ad to purchase wine as opposed to the previous one, which was a subscription ad. And I think, one of the things that people hear often is, oh, you can't actually, make sales on social media. Social media is a great place to engage people and just have a nice conversation, but you can't actually sell. So tell us about, your experience with this ad set.
Yeah, I would strongly disagree with those naysayers. I have a couple of examples that you can sell wine, and you can sell wine to new customers using digital advertising. So with this, This is a set of experimental Pinot Noir that we produced, experimenting with different levels of whole cluster fermentation and increasing levels. It's a super geeky set of wines. It's for a different customer than what we were targeting for sparkling. Mm-hmm. Here, I'm looking for people who are really invested in Pinot Noir, that care about winemaking, that care about process. And so the types of targeting that we did here are very, very different than with the previous campaign. And so with this, I wanted to have an attractive price point and include the shipping. And then we also found through testing that instead of having really small blurbs about what this set is, that people wanted more information. So the copy here is actually a 3 or 4 paragraph blog post essentially about these wines. And so the copy, the headline, the call to action, all of these are things that you can test and try and figure out which combination of all of those elements are going to work best for your particular campaign.
That's a great point you make about testing out the length of the copy as well. I think usually the conventional wisdom is that you want everything to be very short and punchy. And it's fascinating to hear that your customer base really is engaged with this longer form, almost blog length content on Facebook.
Yeah, for this, now that we've gone through the testing for this set, it makes sense. But for when we were trying to sell a set of sparkling wines, a 2 or 3 sentence ad copy was the winner. So I think it really depends on who you're targeting, what you're selling, and how all of the other elements go together. And then, of course, your brand as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And so this one, for reference for everyone, and I think actually you even let me know that an updated number for how much you actually sold here.
Yeah, we sold 55 packs of these whole cluster wines. Most of the people who bought those were brand new customers for us. I was astonished.
I love to hear that they were new customers too, because I think that's the other thing that perhaps folks think is that, my existing customers are engaged and they're going to buy from me, but how valuable are these new people who sign up from a Facebook ad? Can I really get them to buy, especially right now when they're not able to interact with me in person and everything else that's going on?
Yeah, I think the answer is absolutely yes. And you still have to nurture this relationship. You just have to do it differently than in a face-to-face interaction. The people who bought this set are thirsty for wine knowledge. And so the next communication I have with them is going to be about a different set of geeky wines, or maybe the next vintage of the whole cluster set, so that we can kind of continue in learning about Pinot Noir from Oregon, and all of these different ways that I can help them do that.
Yeah, fantastic. All right, so let's now shift to talking about driving engagement and repeat sales. So we've acquired, new customers primarily via social media, and now how do we keep them coming back? How do we drive, more future sales? And this, of course, also goes for how do you keep your existing wine club members engaged? We're all looking towards wine club retention, especially as some of the wine club perks like events are not able to happen right now. So how do we keep our club members, with us, and how do we nurture those long-term fans of our brand through virtual touch points? And the big thing that came out from our conversations, and that's not really a surprise here, is segmentation. That's really the name of the game in terms of how you achieve this, segmenting your audience in order to personalize the offer that you're giving them. And Kim, you spoke about this when we're talking about the Facebook ads, and we're going to now dive into a few other ways that we can segment and personalize content so that you're delivering relevant messages to your audience. It's going to just make them a bigger fan of your brand. So Kim, let's stick with you for a minute, and let's talk about some of the geo-targeting that you did with some of your emails this year.
Yeah, so this is an example of a geo-targeted offer here in the Pacific Northwest. It's really not a big deal to ship in the summer, but most of the rest of the country it is. And so to avoid heat damage, to get the wine to the customer quickly, we came up with a series of bundled wine sets that include air shipping. And this is an example of what we did there. So a little bit of an education piece, and then a button that goes to a page that has all airship wine bundles.
And then on the flip side, for your locals, you had something totally different.
Yeah, so for our locals, there are a few things that we wanted to accomplish. One, since we switched to wine tasting by reservation, there's an education piece there about how to do that, and so that's the one thing we wanted to achieve there. The other thing is for our locals who maybe don't want to come up for a tasting because they're not comfortable being around other people yet, is that we're still offering curbside service, and so we wanted to encourage people who maybe were doing curbside in March, April, and May to let them know that is still an option for them. And then the last thing is that we're shipping locally still, and we have a pretty low purchase threshold for people to receive free shipping on those orders. So this is part of a continuous education piece that we've been doing for our local email audience.
Awesome. Ed, going over to you, one of the other ways that we can segment and personalize emails is based on purchase history. And in particular, this was a segmented email that you ran based on historic average order value. Tell us about this campaign.
Marketing and email marketing specifically is a lot like fishing, right? You want to use the right bait for the right fish. And one of the things we realize is all the people that say that your email should be segmented and relevant to each individual contact on it, they're right. So we try really, really hard to get email offers in front of people that are relevant to their needs, their preferences, and then their buying capacity. So what we have here is just a really simple example where we've segmented based on the average order value of a customer. So we know that, or we believe that maybe somebody who has a really low average order value might not have the capacity to spend $500, $600, $1,000 on any given order. So we're going to give them a smaller offer that's kind of in their strike zone. On the flip side, we'll take somebody that maybe has a really high capacity for buying, and we know that because they have a high average order value, and we're going to give them a bigger offer with a kind of higher threshold. And we've had a lot of success with this. We've A/B tested this quite a bit, and we found it to be really, really powerful. Even so much to now we have, different tiers. We have like 5 different tiers, and we send these type of emails off. But there's a lot of different ways where you can segment things. You can do it based on wine preference. You can do it on geolocation, but don't overlook the average order value, because that will tell you a lot about your customer and where they are kind of with their buying capacity.
Sure. And I think if you look at this example and you think, okay, what would this look like if you had not segmented? And maybe you said, take $50 off a $250 order. Well, the people who had a lower average order value, that's probably wouldn't have bought because it's still too high for them. And then on the flip side, you're leaving all this money on the table because the people who would have spent $500 or $600 or what have you are only going to spend $250.
Yeah. Yeah. So we know this because we started off by sending one big blanket offer email to people because we're stupid, but we're smart enough to kind of iterate on that and optimize it. And as we've done this, I think we sent this back in October. We now do these monthly, and they're pretty hyper focused. Mm-hmm. And we think it's kind of the optimal way at sending offers to different chunks of people.
Totally. I want to look at one more example. This is from you, Kim, and this was targeted specifically to folks who had bought Pinot Gris in the past.
Right. So Pinot Gris is one of our COVID casualty wines. This is usually a wine that does well in wine bars and restaurants, but with those operating at reduced capacity, we needed to move through some inventory. And so I came up with this offer that was targeted at people who buy our Pinot Gris, and people who buy the Pinot tend to buy it by the 6 bottle or case lot amount. And so I wanted to make it really, really attractive for people to buy multiple cases of this wine. And this is what we came up with. And it was a really successful strategy for us.
And I love particularly that you highlighted at the bottom, you led with the price per bottle as opposed to the total purchase price. So yes. Who doesn't, of course, I want to buy this for $9 per bottle. That sounds like much more attractive than, $14.
Yeah, totally. And that's something that we tested out too, is different ways, if you're going to do a discount or a bundle, different ways of communicating that to the customer. And the per bottle price is usually the one that has the most traction with people.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. I also want to highlight, for folks that in this case, you are using a tool on WineDirect called one-click offers, where when you click any of those blue boxes, you get dropped directly into the shopping cart to complete your checkout. So fewer clicks, hopefully fewer people are going to drop off, and you just, more conversions on the sale, which is a really nice, this is, I think, a really great example of how to use that tool.
Yes, thank you. And that's what we found too. People that are going to want this offer, you want to reduce the amount of steps between them seeing it and finishing the transaction.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so let's transition and talk a little bit about the website, because so we're sending these emails, to folks. We're driving them usually to, to a probably a product page on your website, but there's other ways that people might arrive on your site and want to browse your wines. Let's talk about how you draw them into your offering, educate them, and and cross sell. Ed, this is a screenshot of the Tank Garage website. Tell us about how you've organized this shop section.
Yeah, so going back to what we started with, which was, getting new customers that may not yet be familiar with your brand, they've never been to your property, maybe they've never had your wines, giving them a starting point of where they might want to learn more about your wines or see what other people are buying. So this is our new website. We have here that it's called a super menu. So it drops down when you have our shop. And we just have pretty simple categories here. So the run of the mill, wines, here's our current releases, here's our wine club exclusives, here's some gifts. We have a big emphasis on merch, but where we've been getting a lot of action is this collections area. And, it's something we ripped off wholesale from a lot of clothing, commerce companies, we have our specials, we have the things that are selling best. So if you're not familiar with Tank Garage Winery, you might start there. We have these wines that we give charitable portions back to causes we care about called Tank Cares. And then another big thing, which we led with, is we do a lot of collaborations with other brands. So maybe if you are coming over from Parks Project and you're a Parks Project customer, you might want to start there. And lastly, just because the shopping section is the most popular section on our website, we also put a little bit of information up there about Learn. We have a really, really aggressive, amazing shipping where we deliver everywhere in the country for the same rate within 2 business days. So we want people to be able to learn about that. We have an Amazon Prime like model with T-Vine Winery, Rigucci Winery, and James Cole Winery called Cellar Share. And then obviously the obligatory curbside pickup, because that's going to be a thing for a while. So we get everything that can help people pursue a purchase right here under the first link in our heading navigation.
Yeah, and I think it's really important to emphasize that point about new people coming and discovering your brand, particularly for brands like Tank Garage, where you make a lot of different, very diverse wines. Helping people to orient themselves and discover your offerings without feeling overwhelmed is critical, because if they have too many choices, or if there's too many things that don't feel relevant to them, they're just going to bounce.
Yeah, no, decision fatigue is a very real thing. So we have a lot of offerings across the wine spectrum. So we've done a lot of hard working and editing to make sure that we have a really simple navigation for them to find our wines.
Totally. Kim, let's take a look at your website. Another, place that people should be thinking about is how do you leverage your homepage? And so this is an example of your homepage earlier this year when you were offering a special shipping offer, and this was really your prime action that you wanted people to take, and you put it front and center on your homepage, where when people land on the site, this is what they're going to see.
Yeah, your homepage is your most important landing page. It's the first thing people see when they do a Google search for you. And when I finally realized that, then I started to think that I wanted to start putting our most important messaging right there. And so in the spring, when we were having a really awesome shipping offer, that's what we did. And it was really successful for us, and it got people right to the store. And you can check and see how successful that is in different ways, but looking at the customer journey on your website through Google Analytics was really, really helpful in getting us to realize that.
That's a great point, and we're going to dig into Google Analytics, a little bit later. But I thank you for planting the seed here. And as a contrast, this is what is up on your homepage right now. You've shifted your focus, and you're now driving people to click here to book a wine tasting, because that is right now the thing that you want people to do most.
Exactly. Yeah. So shipping in the summer kind of slows down a little bit. More people are, since Wine Country opened up in mid-May, there's a lot of questions about how people can come up and see us. And that's the number one phone call we get, is about questions about wine tasting. And so I wanted to make it as easy as possible for people to get that information and to find that link to make the reservation online.
I love that you mentioned that this is the number one question you get when people call. I think that's another important item for wineries to keep in mind. When you're collecting feedback from your customers in lots of different ways. A lot of it is online, but it can definitely be offline. And if you notice that you're getting an influx of phone calls, figure out how to reduce that burden on your staff. You're already very busy staff. Mm-hmm. And this is a great way to do it, to leverage your website, your social channels, all of your digital, assets to answer those questions before they have to call you.
Exactly.
All right. So we've talked about how to acquire the customers. We've talked about how to maintain engagement, drive those repeat sales. Now let's move into measuring your success. And as I said earlier, I think this is particularly important right now when a lot of us are trying new tactics and you're maybe throwing stuff at the wall to see what sticks. Well, you can't forget to measure the stickiness at the end to make sure that you're spending your time on the right things. So Kim, let's start with you. Tell us about the metrics that you're looking at. What are you tracking?
Well, the first thing I look at every day is the WineDirect dashboard and look at those sales numbers. Mm-hmm. I want to see that in all channels that we're making gains over the same time period from last year. But you can dive into that a little bit deeper. Look at what products are selling. We often offer different products in the tasting room versus what we'll do in an email offer. And so are people responding to those? And so the dashboard has been really, really helpful at looking at those kinds of things in a really relatable way for me, because I'm visual. And then for social media and email campaigns, I look at opens and clicks, comments, all of those things. Are people interested in the messaging that you're putting out enough to want to have a conversation about it? I think that kind of stuff is really important. When you're looking at the body of an email, are people clicking all the way to the end? Are you keeping them all the way until the end of the messaging that you're trying to do? And then another set of figures that I look at is the customer status. Are between our prospects, first-time buyer, repeat customer, and club member, are we growing in all those areas? Are we moving people up that continuum? Are people getting stuck in one of those spots? And if so, I want to be able to address that so that we can kind of continue with that relationship. And then the last thing is the net mailing list growth. I want to encourage everybody to have a clean database. It's not enough to get the emails. You have to be on top of unsubscribes and bounces and make sure that you're cleaning your list so that you know where your true growth is, because otherwise you're just shouting into the void.
Yeah, absolutely. And, one thing to note there too is that if your mailing list is kind of like, inflation. If you have 100 people on your mailing list today, it's actually not next year. It's not 100 people, it might be like 90 or 80 people, because people get new email addresses. They might unsubscribe. So unless you're actually focused on growing that mailing list, you are by definition falling behind. Ed, let's talk about Google Analytics. So we touched on this, a little bit earlier, and this is something that I think is so important. It's easy to set up. There's a little bit of work on the front end to get oriented and set up some of your goals that you're going to speak to. But this is absolutely critical for measuring success. Free and accessible to anyone with a website. So tell us about how you are leveraging Google Analytics and what are some of the key things that you're tracking?
Yeah, analytics tools used to be something that wineries didn't have on their website. And now I think we're at a point where wineries have them on their website. They just don't know how to use them, because you go in here and you see all these different granular tools and options, and it's overwhelming. But one of the simplest things you can do is you can create these really simple goals. So Grace from our team is a master at these. She's probably inappropriately obsessed with them. But I have a good example here of just tracking maybe somebody joining our wine club online. And we do that by using a Google Pixel on our website, which if you're a WineDirect client, you can do pretty easily through settings, or you can have your account manager assist you with. And that can help track people on your website, the pages they're on, where they're coming from, and then the pages they leave from. So in this instance, we've set up a goal, and you can assign a monetary value to every goal that is hit for people to end up on our wine club sign up confirmation page, because we know that if they make it there, they've probably joined our wine club. So in this instance, we set these goals up. They're really simple. When we are sending out an email campaign, and hopefully in our calendar, we have some sort of idea of what we need to hit for that, we can come in here and we can see directly how much from that specific campaign actually led to a conversion. We have these set up for a lot of things. We have them set up for people purchasing online, maybe that came through our social media ads. We have them set up for people making reservations. So if you're doing what Kim does, which is trying to drive people to book appointments, you can set up pixels. We use Talk, which is another WineDirect partner, and you can set your pixels on there too, so you can confirm whether people have made it to the confirmation page on Talk. So we track all of these things. So when Kim was just talking about sort of these like top line numbers, these are really important to us when it comes to our marketing strategies, because we can see just at a high level what of our individual strategies are working, and we have big whole numbers here, and we have monetary values that tell us how much they're actually making for the company. So if you have a boss who's suspicious of the ROI on a lot of these marketing tactics, you can use these Google Analytics goals, which you can set up in the admin section of Google Analytics to really show them that, you know, your efforts are working and they're improving.
That's a fantastic point about the importance of showing, not only figuring out what's working versus what's not, but showing the value of the work here. And I think one of the things that can happen with, especially with digital marketing, is a lot of it is a little bit less, it's less visible than a tasting room, which by definition has, you know, physical people in it. And so when we're working with these new strategies for folks who are not as familiar with them, or if you have a boss or manager who's not as familiar, being able to show the hard numbers of what you've achieved can go a long way in, you know, winning over the skeptics.
Yeah, for sure. And the other thing that I just encourage people is to constantly be iterating and evolving, because customers, you know, behavior changes, your content changes. So keep testing things, and you'll always find the more optimal sort of approach to any given thing, especially with tracking goals in Google Analytics. Yeah.
And, you know, to follow on that, when people ask, well, what's a good conversion rate? Well, a good conversion rate is one that's always increasing. If you're consistently getting better, like that's what you should be tracking, rather than figuring out, well, what are other people doing? How do I compare to them? Compare yourself, you know, to your past performance, and that will give you an indication of how, you know, of whether you're going in the right direction.
Yeah, I'm happy you said that, because I think, you know, my words of advice to anyone out here is don't copy our tactics and our strategies exactly, because your mileage may vary. Like, you got to test this out and you got to see what works for you, because the unsatisfying answer with all this stuff is it really depends on a lot of different variables. So make sure that you are continually testing it and then hopefully improving, like Adrian says.
Yeah, great point. And totally agree with you, Ed. So let's talk about planning for fall. As we head into this, you know, it's harvest, the busy holiday sales season. What are you guys thinking about? What are you planning? Kim, tell us about the stuff that you've got on deck.
Yeah, so I'm the primary person for digital marketing around here, but I'm also a winemaker, and our harvest is going to be starting in a few weeks. So what I'm going to be doing up until the beginning of harvest is to try and set up as many automated campaigns as I can, and Facebook ads as I can. And I'll probably dabble a little bit in Instagram advertising too, so that we can have these mechanisms in place so that I can step away, do harvest and still be engaging our existing customers and new customers and retargeting people as well. Looking a little further out, one thing that we've seen during COVID the last 6 months is that people are buying a lot of care packages for people. And so I really want to build out our gift section because people are sending more wine to friends and family because they can't be with them in person, but they're also buying stuff for themselves. And so I want to try and meet the needs of the gift buyer and the gift receiver in that way. And then also do it with the mindset that people have probably been depleting their existing stock. So I imagine a lot of folks that are going to be buying wine over the next few months are looking for wines that they can enjoy in the near future. So I'll be focusing on seasonal wines and some more limited releases as well.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And I love the discussions we've had about the focus that you have on holiday gift packs. I think that those also play in, frankly, to the customer acquisition side of the conversation, where the giftee is an opportunity for you to gain a new customer.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think Ed mentioned in a previous conversation about having an incentive in the box, so you have that opening experience where you are starting that conversion conversation from when they receive the gift. And I love that. I'm going to steal that idea.
There's an example of a really good one that everyone in the audience can feel free to steal. Ed, what about you? What have you got? What are you thinking about for fall as we head into the season?
Yeah, our Instagram ads have been doing so well. We're just going to take O&D off. No, I'm just joking. Well, it's following the trajectory that we've just been talking about, which is being aggressive, smart, and nimble. We're going to continue to offer amazing gift offerings to everybody. We have a lot of really exciting, like limited edition collaborations coming out, which are really popular. Things that raise funds for really important causes, which there seems to be plenty of them this year, and just really, really refining our strategies. So one of the things we didn't really get a chance to talk to you about is actually building segments within your Facebook or Instagram ads, using lookalike audiences, retargeting, using advertising platforms outside of Facebook. So Google, and we've done some weird stuff in the past. So really trying to experiment early, iterate quickly, and take a scientific approach to all of our offerings. But it's going to be wild. We're going to have a lot of fun doing so. This year has been a challenge, I think, for all of us, that pivoting and adapting to this new world. But it's forced us to learn a lot of different things, and it's forced us to really refine our technique at discovering and trying out new tactics and strategies. So we're going to continue to do that. And frankly, I'm pretty excited for it.
Well, I look forward to receiving a lot of those emails. I love subscribing to many wineries mailing lists and checking out keeping tabs on interesting things that people are doing. I definitely recommend that as a tactic for our audience. If you're looking for inspiration, sign up for Kramer Vineyards and for Tank Garage's mailing lists, and sign up for other brands that you enjoy and your neighbors, and that is going to give you a really good feel for what. Both, inspiration for things that you can do, as well as understanding where the other kinds of content that your customers may be receiving. Because for sure, they don't only subscribe to your mailing list; they're getting emails from a lot of other wineries as well.
Yeah, what's the saying? Real artists steal. Like, do so shamelessly and don't look back, because it's there's, in my opinion, for us, there's so many wineries and people that are way smarter than us and way smarter than me, because we're, again, bona fide morons. And so we've learned so much just by seeing things like what Kim's done here, which I'm already kind of taking notes on things we're going to egregiously steal. But that's a really, really effective way of doing it. Subscribe to other people and see what they're doing and do your version of it.
Absolutely. Well, on that note, for additional inspiration and resources, I invite everybody to check out the DTC Knowledge Center on winedirect.com. So you can access this at winedirect.com/resources. We have all kinds of free, helpful content on here, like case studies. If you want to dig deeper into Kim's story and how they really drove record e-commerce sales this year, we have a case study on that. We've got a free winery marketing calendar that can help you get organized as we head into the holidays, as well as webinars of past recordings. And we'll certainly be hosting more webinars as we come up in the fall. And with that, I'm going to thank my panel, Ed and Kim. Thank you so much for joining me today. This was a fantastic conversation. Thank you for sharing your wisdom and your insights. And I know the audience, hopefully has taken some notes, has some ideas to, as we start off the fall sales season. And a big thank you to Wine Industry Network as well for having us. It was really a pleasure to be here. If anyone has follow-up questions or we weren't able to get to in the chat today, you can also feel free to shoot me an email. I'm at adrian.stillman@winedirect.com. And with that, we're going to sign off. Thank you guys so much. This was great.
Hello, everyone. George Christie here again with the Wine Industry Network. Well, this concludes the inaugural Wine Industry Sales Symposium. Once again, I want to start by thanking our sponsors. If it wasn't for their support, we could not have offered this free the way that we did. Commerce 7, Copper Peak Logistics, Orion Wine Software, Outshinery, Queenie Wine Intelligence, the Digest of Wine and Spirits Law, The Good Company, Vin Expo New York, and Wine Shipping. Thank you so much for all your support. I want to thank all of our speakers who were just terrific for their time and for sharing their expertise. I want to thank our moderators, Eric Guerra and Laura Webb, for their time as well and their leadership and for drawing so much great content from our panelists. Thank you, Laura. Thank you, Eric. And finally, I want to thank all of you that attended and remind you that we will be back in person for the second Wine Industry Sales Symposium. I want you to save the date, May 25th and 26th, 2021. We're going to be in Sonoma County at the Hyatt in Santa Rosa for an in-person event. Stay safe, everyone, and thanks again for being with us. I look forward to seeing you all again in person soon.